Well, thanks everyone for joining us with Your Day with David, the first episode of hopefully something long to come, I would say, every Saturday. And I have Drew with me, Drew Butta, my best friend from college. Later on in this episode, we'll have Sadie, his wife, on the show too. But, probably two of the most, what's the word we want to use? Foundational people to how I am the way I am now. Yeah. And we're in his basement this week. This is not going to be the normal weekly setup, if you will. They spent 3 years redoing their basement. And
3 years, yeah.
I don't have a basement. So, short trip to Iowa to shoot this first episode, and I wanted to be with my best friends. And again, if you didn't get a chance to to watch the intro video, the whole purpose of the show is kind of for me to reconnect with a lot of people that I've been with in my life, or people that I've lost touch with that can watch the videos to kind of check in and see on some of the things that I do, but more importantly, be pretty vulnerable and open to the fact that life is pretty tough, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a roller coaster.
Even when a lot of times, if you look at it objectively, things are going pretty well. Sometimes if one thing just isn't going right, it feels like everything's kind of falling apart. So, the whole purpose of the podcast, again, is for people that feel like things are falling apart or they don't have any sort of support, if you will, or friend groups that they can reach out to. This is kind of a nice weekly routine for them to just join us and listen to conversation about, my friends that I've met, and my friend group is pretty diverse to where we kind of have exposure to, kind of every industry out there in the world.
Yeah, we all split up in different directions.
I think there will be a lot of nostalgia and reminiscing on the show, at least in the beginning to start.
Yeah.
And then kind of transition a little bit into how we've maybe changed over the last 8-9 years now. If you can think about it, we're almost to a decade. I was talking with a friend of mine that I visited here in Des Moines a couple nights ago about how my high school did a 5-year reunion.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, it was kind of a waste of time. Is that what I want to say?
Sure, yeah.
Nobody changed.
I didn't even go to my 5 years, so that explains.
Yours
something.
had it too.
I don't even know. I didn't get an invite. There was one girl who was supposed to be responsible for sending out the 5-year invite on Facebook, and I never got one. So
I can guarantee you she doesn't care. Either.
I don't think so.
I don't think if it all imploded and you didn't have your 5-year reunion, I don't think anyone would necessarily be bothered. Yeah. But it was nice. I say all that how it was a waste of time, but it was nice seeing everyone because, again, big difference from Drew to me is my high school, I had a graduating class of 24.
Yeah.
And Drew...
And I was 411.
Yeah, just small town Chicago, right?
Small town Chicago suburbs, yeah.
Yeah. So that was a kind of a big shocker, if you want to call it a cultural shock for me when I got into college and met you guys and so many people from the Chicagoland area come to Iowa State, or really just Iowa in general, for the lower tuition costs.
Yeah, I mean, that's
expectations.
Yeah. I mean, the Illinois in-state tuition is about the same price as out-of-state tuition in Iowa, so people are like...
Yeah. And I feel like you're safer in Iowa. I don't know. I feel like anyone I talk to that lives in Chicago, whether it's my family, don't tell me, you just got to be in the right places, right? But... if you're having a college experience, I don't know if anyone can say anything bad about Iowa schools besides the fact that we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, location's the only downside, I suppose.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is since we're kind of dead center, we're also the same distance to anywhere you want to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to fly out of Des Moines and connect to anything.
How far is Ames from Chicago, where you are? 5-hour drive?
Like 5 hour, 5:15-ish to like
Something
Chicago. I'm northwest suburbs, so it's about 5 hours. But
Okay. And did you get a chance? You visited Chicago recently a couple times, not too long ago, over the holiday season.
yeah,
You would have went. And
I visit my parents.
And then
my
more
hometown.
recently, your family got a new home, kind of as a like a vacation getaway.
Yeah, like we've always loved. It's in Galena, Illinois. We've always loved that as like a vacation location. Ever since my dad's like a big triathlete, Ironman, crazy, all that crazy
It's
stuff.
been a while since he's done that though.
Yeah, he's
Does he still bike?
yeah, still loves cycling. He's getting into his mid-50s here, kind of like doing a transition here. But, I mean, he trained really hard for, 15 years straight, where it was like 30, 40 hours a week training. And that's not work.
Yeah,
He works and trained, so he'd wake up like 4 a.m.
He wouldn't be able to do that nowadays.
No, so he's transitioning a little bit, like his knees giving up. His knees aren't horrible, but, like the 3-hour bike sessions and stuff, it's not as realistic.
How old's your dad now? Is
He's
he 50?
Yeah, I think he's 50 flat or 51. About to be 51 this year, I think.
Okay. Yeah, and for those that don't know, Drew's dad is largely a very big piece as to, kind of where I work now and how I ended up in St. Louis, actually.
Yeah.
He's been kind of a mentor to me, self-appointed.
Yeah.
I kind of didn't give him much of a choice with just me constantly reaching out, but your dad obviously was very much willing to give that kind of support.
He loves, he's always been a mentor in all stages of his life, so he likes being like that.
I'm not sure the first time I met your dad, but for some context, I met Drew my freshman year of college through a friend of a roommate kind of situation, or I don't know if we want to call him a friend. We had a gentleman, I won't share his name.
No.
But was roommates with one of my best friends, our best friend Yandi, who one day ideally will be on this show as well. Still one of my good friends, and be exciting to reconnect with him too. Mm-hmm. He had a roommate that, let's just say, less than ideal of a human.
Well,
He wasn't a very good person, I don't think.
His priorities were different than ours.
They were.
We'll
like showering. Showering was pretty low on his priority list.
Yeah.
Where you would walk into their dorm room and your nose would start to like burn. It was like a sour.
I think like especially freshman year, there's a big transition for some people.
Yeah.
And some of them keep up their hygiene, and some people don't. I guess when they're out of the house. So.
Sure. Yeah, but anyway, was a computer engineer, and
we can edit this part out.
He was a computer engineer, doing some of the basic classes, and then Drew was also at the time, and still obviously finished his degree.
Yeah, I actually started mechanical engineering, and then I switched to computer engineering, but it was within that first semester.
You like within the first like couple weeks when you had that window, or?
Yeah, it was kind of weird. It was
I don't
like
think I ever knew that.
I was mechanical engineer for like the first 4 weeks, and I just, I like all through high school I took all like the drafting classes and stuff, and I really liked doing like the rendering of objects and all that, and sketching out different designs. So
for those people listening that have no idea what he's talking about, don't worry, I don't either.
But there's an initial part of mechanical engineering where you're just drawing like each side of an object to like a perfect scale on like a grid.
Okay.
And then eventually you can put that in a computer program, so like a 3D printer or something knows how to print out the actual object.
Sure.
But
3D printers are pretty accessible nowadays.
Now they are totally.
I remember it used to be this unicorn, if you will, that I visited the University of Arkansas one year, and they were showing us their science department because they were trying to get us to join their graduate program. And talking about how on the cutting edge they were with their 3D printers. And they're like, here's this Yoda statue we made with a 3D printer. Like whoever ran the department was a big Star Wars nerd or something like that. And then now I like watch videos of homes being built out of 3D printers.
Oh yeah,
Which
like
is
the
kind of
cement.
crazy.
I think
Yeah,
they're, like,
it's
the
like
cement
3D
homes.
cement,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. But
Yeah.
pretty crazy.
Yeah, but I really liked the whole drafting and objects stuff. So I liked that in high school, and then I started in college mechanical, and then
And then transition.
like 2 weeks, 3 weeks in, like our main, like one of our main first questions on a homework assignment was like, how do you counterbalance a skid loader with like this much weight on the front? How much weight has to be on the back? And I was like, all right, I'm bored.
It's like, well, I'll tell you how I counterbalance. I also dig the same amount in the back of the skid loader as I did the front. And it's balanced.
I think it's really, I mean, I totally respect the field and everything, but I'm like, I had a moment where I'm like, my whole life I've been like a gamer. I've loved computers.
Sure.
I've loved thinking about how a computer thinks. So I went to my advisor and I was like, I want to switch. I'd like to switch, So 3 or 4 weeks in, you can still drop classes, but you can't necessarily pick up new ones. Because you're kind of a month in.
I can get that.
So I dropped as much as I could to still stay a full-time student, which is like 12 credits. And then I signed up for a half semester Python course. That would be the second half of the semester. So I just waited.
Yeah.
And then
So second semester you were taking 15 credits.
yeah, and before the second half of the first semester. Yeah, because it was a
okay.
half semester class. But I was impatient, so I'm like, all right, I want to start learning coding. So I went to Code Academy, the website,
The classic.
and they have awesome courses to get you into problem solving and stuff. So
I think I could include that link down in the description.
if you want,
codeacademy.com.
I think they're a little different now than they were back then. They have like advanced courses you can pay for and stuff, but back then it was free.
They still have the free ones though.
Yeah, they still have intros. But I mean, I loved it. I was just obsessed with the website for a while, and then once the Python course actually started, I was like, oh, I know all this stuff already. So that was kind of fun to actually be pre-prepared. But
and that's when at some point after that transition was when you met Yandi's roommate, and who kind of used you as a, hey, did you do the homework yet? Kind of guy.
Yeah, I didn't meet him through the class. My roommate at the time met him at engineering orientation before the semester even started.
Good old Pabianskis.
Yeah. So that's kind of like our first week in college, kind of, I was with my roommate, and then we met Yandi and his roommate within the first week. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And that's how I got to meet you, because also at that time I was in electrical engineering.
Yes.
Before I went through my
transition.
Yeah, we'll just call it a transition. And so I had some of the similar classes, or maybe intro, and you in fact did some of the classes that later on through your course.
Yeah.
To EE 285 or something like that. I don't even remember the numbers anymore.
Yeah, computer engineering, we definitely have a couple electrical engineering courses.
Yeah, and that was where I kind of got exposure for the first time to people besides my family, like my brothers and sisters, that also played video games and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So that room, we would always have 5 laptops going on at all times, or in some people's cases, their computers set up too.
Yeah.
And that was how I got to know Drew, mainly because he would come over to go do homework. Yandi's roommate would not do any of it, and would just kind of hang out there and be playing video games. And then we kind of just, that's still a gray area for me. I don't really remember how we ended up hanging out more.
I remember our first meeting.
I do remember over time. It kind of got to be I stayed in Linden Hall, and Drew was in Maple, part of MWL, Maple Larch, across the street, and they had the East Side Diner, or what was the East Side Market underneath.
Yeah.
So we had dining dollars when we wanted to go get a little bit of a late night snack,
Yeah.
after some recreational activities. And
They close
or
at like
video
1 a.m.
games.
or something.
Yeah,
So that was nice.
but the doors to get there locked at 10.
Yeah,
And so the only way that we could get in was to text you.
that's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah, there was one time we went and we saw you walking and we're like banging on the doors, hoping you'll notice us because it was cold out. I mean, it was freezing. Everything's freezing in Iowa. It doesn't matter what time of
Okay,
year.
sure.
I drove up here from St. Louis this weekend and everything's 30 degrees colder. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, fish out of water, I guess. Maybe a fish in a frozen pond, one of the two. And that slowly transitioned into suddenly our freshman year's over. That pattern
Yeah. No, it was so
continued,
fast.
and we got to a point where like, hey, this was in March, I believe.
Yeah, horribly late. For,
Very, very late.
like,
But also, let me continue. We didn't know where we were going to stay the next year.
Yeah.
We didn't know if we were going to live on campus or go off campus. I didn't want to be on campus, truly. And so Drew comes to me one day, and it's just like, hey, what are you doing next year?
yeah.
And I said, I have no idea. Do you want to be roommates? And it was kind of like, yeah. And then I think it was just initially you and me. And then we were like, do you think there's anyone else that would want to do it? And I was like, let me ask Yandy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yanni was in. And then that was it. We
had
we
three.
picked out our 3-bedroom apartment. We were good to
Did
go.
we?
All the parents were on board. Back then our parents were like
Yeah.
our training wheels, if you will, moving and
Oh.
logistics and
Yeah.
where we should be staying and then you volunteered a 4th roommate. I'll use the word volunteered. He kind of volunteered himself, which is fine. I won't use names again.
Yeah.
And so we ended up getting a 4-bedroom apartment for our sophomore year and lived together. Kind of went through, I guess, all the ups and downs of living with roommates.
With roommates, yeah.
And it was kind of nice too because you're going through schooling, relationships, all that stuff, and at the end of the day, you still have the same people at home that you can confide in or reach out to,
Yeah. Totally.
whatever it might be. I think it's important too for the people that are listening is, I got to meet my best friends through college, but really I got to meet them because I took a chance to actually be social or like have a leap of faith talking to strangers, which a lot of people struggle with. I don't think everyone has that.
I'm terrified of talking to strangers.
Yeah. I remember you don't. What was the thing? You don't.
I hate
answer the phone.
I hate
or
phone calls and drive-thrus.
You don't order food over the phone.
Oh no! I'm terrified of doing that.
DoorDash has saved your life.
Oh my god! I'm so happy that thing brought it. I don't have to talk to anyone.
This will be a contactless delivery. You better. You're darn right it will.
If the guy rings my bell, I'm gonna wait till he leaves. Like I'm not gonna say. Hey.
You can now talk through your is it
Talk
a
to
ring?
through my doorbell. Yeah, it's the
And
Google Net.
Whatever
Google
it might
one.
be,
Google
and just
Nest.
say leave it at the door, and let them go.
Well, yeah, that was an upside of COVID. Is they stopped
If there
like
was an
handing it
upside
to you.
of COVID.
That is an upside for me. Was they don't hand you the food anymore. They just set it down and ring the doorbell. And I was like, thank God, that's the default. That's amazing.
I just remember when I would order Domino's during quarantine, this whole
Yeah.
pandemic, and they started putting the pizzas on those little tables. The table they put inside the middle of a pizza?
Yeah, yeah.
They started putting the pizza box on like 3 of those outside my door when I would order it. So the
Oh,
pizza
yeah,
never
so there's
touched
a-
the ground.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
saw
it's
that
like-
a couple places do that. Yeah,
I thought that was nice.
yeah.
So what I was getting to or alluding to a little bit is I hope that some of the people who are watching and kind of feel that they don't have an option to like find friends or get new friends. It's not the hardest part of that probably is that moment when you say, I want to talk to someone else.
Yeah.
And actually going and talk to him. And that can be a very either fulfilling experience, but obviously, as with most things in life, there's a lot of rejection. Meeting new friends, new relationships, jobs, projects that you want to start. I think that there's a lot of value in just the trying, right?
Yeah.
So now, granted, at the end of the day, what I was getting to in the intro of this whole podcast too is hopefully as you guys watch and you become part of this community, you feel that you are a part of something larger. But I can't replace some of the more important things like therapy, right? That's something that I've recently started going to, found a lot of value in, and been able to grow in a certain aspect. And I think there's a lot of different ways to grow as a person, and a lot of people sometimes neglect the fact that you can grow in regards to how well you handle your emotions or react to things. Emotional intelligence is kind of what I'm alluding to, if you will.
I think also just saying go to therapy is kind of one thing, but there's a really important part is all therapists are different. Like they're all going to talk to you in a different way. So you kind of have to be like, if your first therapist isn't really helping you in the way that you need it, then don't make sure you kind of keep bouncing around, because
don't feel guilty at all by the fact that you might not mesh well with one therapist. Try to do what you can for research. I think a big problem of the way therapy is structured now is it's impossible to figure out what you're supposed to be looking for. There's so many different designations, different experiences when you're looking for people. Luckily for me, I had a friend that is currently in the industry that helped me navigate that spider web, if you will. But like college as well, I think about how I guess the important parts of college, where was the biggest growth, or what was the most important experience for me? And it actually had nothing to do with school. It was that sophomore year of college when my best friend had passed away. And I was 19, something like that, 7 years ago now, which is kind of crazy to think about, where you go from being a 4.0 student to handing in quizzes blank kind of thing was my response to all that. And just once you try to get yourself out of that rabbit hole, when you do finally come up for some air, you kind of have to reevaluate kind of some of your values, if you will. And I was lucky I had you guys as well as roommates to kind of just, I don't know, bounce things off of. Or I think there was also this environment of knowing that no matter what we did, it was like a judgment-free zone too, that apartment.
Yeah.
Yandi's a good example of that, which we'll probably cover on a later episode of Yandi's schooling experience.
Yeah.
And eventually how he decided to no longer go to school. Also a pretty interesting dynamic too. But that was how I transitioned over to the finance world of things, and eventually how my relationship with your dad became a little bit more relevant, I guess you would say, because your dad does the same thing that I do, but much, much better. Well, or has more exposure at this point after doing it for years.
He's been a student of the craft for longer, and he's always kept the student mentality, which I think is really important.
And I think I would have met your dad probably on like one of those parents come to college weeks or something like that, and he drove us around Frat Row, telling us where do you remember that?
At Drake. He probably drove us around Drake. Because he was Drake.
Well, I think he still told us, though, like we were driving around Frat Row.
I think he definitely visited Iowa State a couple times.
And then I remember, and then again, Sadie, Drew's wife, will be coming on a little bit here shortly when she wraps up with what she's doing. But that first apartment sophomore year is also how you got to meet your now wife.
Yes.
Who, back then, and I'll share the story here soon, was a good friend of mine, and it was really just fun to watch on my end of things how you guys got closer, and seeing you grow too. You think about the kind of guy that you were our freshman year.
Oh, totally, yeah.
And the beginning of our sophomore year, and some of the stuff that you went through. Obviously, I still remember that day. You told me how many miles did you run in a single day listening to that one playlist?
Well, it was like 13 miles I ran. At from 10. I started at 10 p.m. or something, and I didn't run before that. I did 2 miles max.
Dude, I'll be honest with you. I don't care how sad I get.
Yeah.
I can't run 13 miles.
I don't.
A mile and a half in, I'm crying on the concrete.
There was a point. I was definitely not running fast in any way. I was more bouncing at walking pace at the end for sure. But I was just saying, emotional energy. Sometimes I still live by that. Emotional energy can get you through a lot of things. If you're burning it in a good way, either weightlifting or running, it can really be used kind of as an alternate source.
I was reading this one thing about aggression.
Yeah.
And, people always say when you're angry, go to the gym, or if you're angry, punch a punching bag or something like that. And I was reading it, and it turns out it's actually not a healthy response, because it reinforces
anger
and your response to that anger.
Yeah.
That your outlet is in fact to hit something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Versus looking for, say, maybe more safe or healthy coping
mechanisms. You don't want adrenaline to be part of your anger response, I guess.
Now that's another thing too, when it talks about working out and burning energy. That was something that you and I got pretty passionate about our sophomore year of college, that second half of the second semester.
And
into
especially
the summer. Into the summer. I'm not sure how we really delved into it, but there was that moment. Was it Bro Science?
Yeah. So
Bro Science was an old YouTube channel.
He's still out there.
Does he still make videos? Yeah. Shout out to Bro Science, and just comedic humor when it came to exercising.
Yeah, it's out way out there, extreme bro lifting, which is hilarious, but it's not necessarily the proper way to approach.
I wonder if anyone remembers the first time they start taking protein shakes or pre-workout. If they have that moment etched into their heart somewhere. I don't know the first time I took C4, but I probably could remember the last time I did.
Yes, through high school, I was big into baseball, so I had to do my mandatory lifts as part of that routine. And then leaving high school, I had to have a shoulder surgery. Yeah. But then I got into lifting freshman year of college with Pappy.
And let's take a pause there real quick, and we'll come back after just a real quick short break. All right, so we're back, and we were kind of talking a little bit before the break about sophomore year, Drew and I getting into weightlifting. And for those that are listening, Sadie is now joining us on the show. And then obviously for those watching, Sadie is Drew's wife. That I didn't want to share the story until you got here about how we all met and how that roller coaster came to be, if you will. But again, Sadie and Drew, one of my best friends, not one of them, they certainly are my best friends. And at some point when we were talking about this, our sudden fascination with actually going to the gym our sophomore year and not wanting to be small. Yeah. I think that's what it was. We at some point felt small.
Well, yeah, I felt small my whole life, but that's because I've just been super skinny.
Yeah, and you are one of those people, and there's probably a lot of people listening very similar to Drew who, no matter how hard you try, you can't really put on weight very well. Yeah. It takes an enormous amount of effort.
It really is.
Food.
Everyone, a lot of people say they're jealous of people who can, eat anything. But
that would be me.
Yes. Yeah. But there's definitely, there's a downside when you want to, if you get into working out and you want to gain weight. It's actually a big effort to eat. I think I was 3,500 calories a day was kind of what I had to do just to gain weight at a comfortable amount.
Yeah, that's not tough for me.
Well, when you're trying
to McDonald's,
yeah,
eat half of that.
Cleaner food.
Yeah.
I don't like using the word clean, but it's more like more nutritious food.
Sure.
3,500. That's a big effort because the volume of chicken breast and whatever the heck healthy food is.
Sure.
More than a McDonald's shake.
Now that Sadie's here, we can start sharing the story, because I already went into a little bit about how we moved into that apartment together sophomore year, or the 4 original guys that were there. Drew, me, Yandi, and Bryce. And I remember very well the first time you and I met, which we didn't realize it was you until the second time we met. But I was in the parking lot, not sure, I was coming home from something, probably class on campus. I know it was late, or at least it was dark, is what I'll say. And you and your roommate, Kirsten, where I'm not sure who was driving.
It was me.
Okay. All right. Sadie was driving. Classic backing up without looking in your rearview mirror. Or maybe I was just camouflaged because of my darker complexion.
I genuinely did not see you.
Yeah.
I didn't think anyone was behind me at all.
Yeah. So anyway, they almost run me over in reverse, which would have been fine because I didn't die. It would have been more fine rather, if her reaction was what a normal person would have done, which would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I almost hit you. But no, their reaction was to burst out laughing in their car, and even though the windows are closed, I could still hear them shrieking on the inside. And I'm like, nice to meet you too. And I go back up to the apartment.
It was just the surprise of almost hitting a human,
Yeah.
and your reaction to
Nervous
it.
There was a second time later on in our college experience where Kirsten was driving and almost ran over that man on a bike.
Oh, yeah.
When we were turning left.
Yeah.
And like her response, rather than hitting the brakes, was just to scream louder.
That's her reaction to everything.
It's like those video, like people who get excited, they just slam their foot on the accelerator instead. Yes. That's Kirsten for you. And again, good friend.
Yeah.
We love Kirsten. And that was how the second time we met, I came home again from either maybe the gym or something on campus. And we had a guys' night planned for us to just play poker, drink some beer. I'm not sure if there was anything else that we...
I don't know, probably
But just a poker,
a
nice poker night.
Rice and canned ham or whatever the heck we always have for dinner.
That was lit. We ate canned ham and rice many a time. But I was getting out of my truck at the time, and I was walking to our apartment door, and I was singing some country song. I'm not sure what it was. Probably like Barefoot Blue Jean Night or something like that. And then all I hear, again, it's dark, which is a common theme of when I see Sadie, was like, for some reason, no one can see anything. She's out on her balcony, her and Kirsten, we're on the 3rd floor at this apartment complex, and they end up being right next door to ours. And all I hear is, woo, singing American Idol, or something like that, yelling down at me. They're drinking.
Yep.
And I can't see them. I look up, I can see like shadows of people on the 3rd floor balcony, and I'm just, we start talking, kind of like Romeo to Juliet style, just yelling down at me from 3 floors above. And then I'm not sure what compelled me, but I just said, hey, we're having a guys' night if you want to come over. Something like that. Fully expecting you guys to not. Very much did not think that you guys were going to come over. And so I go up to our apartment. We start setting up the poker, crack a few beers, then knock on the door, and then sure enough, Kirsten and Sadie come in. And I can remember, I had a great time that night. And then I remember there was kind of a consensus, though, after they left, that they were like, besides Drew, they were like, why did you invite them? Like, it was guys' night and all this stuff.
Crash the party.
And then Drew was like, I don't know, I kind of like Sadie.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, Sadie was kind of cool. And slowly, just over time, we just kept inviting you guys over, and vice versa too, right? We would go over to your guys' place and meet your roommates.
Yeah.
Toby, Brad. I'm not sure if there's a third one.
Mike.
Mike. Good old Mike. Hope he's doing good.
Yeah, not sure.
Not sure. I hope they're all doing good in their own
Me
way.
too.
And a lot of times, though, when Sadie would come over, she'd be hanging out with me because I would hang out in the living room.
Yeah.
Because everyone else, again, we're an apartment full of nerds,
Yeah.
had their own computer setups. You guys did a lot of raiding in video games, and so you'd have nights planned where you just for hours be in your room, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't have that. One, because I was a broke boy and couldn't afford a nice setup, and so I would just be on my small little laptop gaming in the living room, if you will. And so Sadie would come and hang out with me, and then Drew would go on breaks and pop out and say hi, kind of thing.
Yeah, because it was Tuesday, Thursday, I think I had my scheduled raid night, and that was the days you had like shorter school or something. And so it was like basically every time she came over, she's like, I was in my room because I was like, I had this commitment with, it was like 10 other people to be doing this from like 8 to 11 p.m. or something.
Which shout out to people that can coordinate 10 schedules and not lose their mind, because planning a trip like this to come up to Iowa with 3 people was already, well, let's just say we're missing one of our people that was supposed to be here. Schedules are tough.
Yeah.
Schedules are tough. So I'll let you continue talking about.
Well, okay. Well, yeah, so it was funny because I'd be only rating like 8 to 11 p.m. and that's also the only time Sadie came over because it was her school was, it was out earlier on those days.
Sadie, a little background on you. At that time, you were in cosmetology school.
Yep, I would have been. My schedule was typically from anywhere. It was like 1:30 to 8:30. Mm-hmm. So then I would come over after school and hang out with David.
Yeah. A lot of people in my friend group or my hometown that might be listening also went to cosmetology school, and I've always had high respect for the industry, I guess, if you want to say, because I know how difficult Asian hair can be. I mean, there were plenty of times Sadie gave me a haircut and she'd be bleeding because of hair slippers.
Are brutal.
Yeah. And, but I would as bad as I felt making you bleed, I'd much rather have that than have my mom cut my hair like she did growing up. You can't take back the bowl cuts. No. Those are immortalized in photos. And again, shout out to anyone that had their parents do their hair and then had to show up to school the next day and you were bullied. I don't know if I was.
Yeah, there was one time where I think the guard fell off my mom's hair thing, so I just had like a strip right here.
Yeah,
that was like bald.
And you had to play it off like it was all part of the plan.
Yeah, like my teacher asked me, because it was like second grade, my teacher's like, what happened to your head? I'm like, I don't know. So,
yeah,
I'm not sure. Screwed up.
I'm not sure why they don't categorize parents giving haircuts as not as abuse, because it really should be outlawed.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Spend the $15 to take your kid to get a kid's haircut at a salon or anywhere.
Well,
really.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes. I mean, I know I hated going to a hairdresser person because I had the social anxiety thing, so I didn't want to be, stuck in a chair while some girl's trying to have a short conversation with me.
It's so crazy to think that our kids will never have that social anxiety with getting their hair cut until they're 18.
Yeah. And
it's going to be someone other than their mom.
Right, because you can cut their hair for them, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, that touches on an interesting point, although I would probably be a really big tangent, which is fine, but, we're 26, 25, and it's different for a lot of people. I think about where I'm at, and by no means I'm the type of guy for a long time who said, no, I don't want to have any kind of family before 30, right?
Yeah.
But, if you're willing to share, you guys are maybe in a little bit of a different mindset than that, where you guys,
Yeah.
you've got the house, you got roots.
I mean, we're
And-
still similar. Like, we definitely wanted to do like the house and dogs first before kids. But yeah.
If
I
it
mean,
were up to me, I would have all of my kids by 30. I would like to be 50 when they're out of the house.
yeah. Yeah.
What if they stayed in the house after 50? What if they're
That's
Well-
fine too, but they'd be self-sufficient.
20 years from now, you gotta
Might
wonder.
be different. It's
I
gonna be
mean,
very different.
now that everyone's working from home, it might be a different dynamic of saying, "Oh, my kids never left," because they might have their big boy job in your basement.
Might be college at home. Might be working from home.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
it's different for us too because we've been together since we were 19 and 20.
Yeah.
So our timeline was just faster than people that are meeting, when they're 28 years old.
Yeah. I mean, we met in college. But I would say I don't know if our timeline is necessarily fast.
well,
No, it's just
I wouldn't say
different.
fast. I would say because I have friends. The reason why I bring it up is because I'm at a very different stage than I would say that you guys are. Where I've had friends that, had kids in high school,
Yeah.
and are great parents.
Mm.
Or then people that got married right out of high school as well. Well, I have my own opinions on the matter. Like, how can you possibly know if that person's the right person for you at 18? Some people are very fortunate, and it does work
And
out.
find the right person. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I know that even location sometimes has been in conversation for you guys, because I remember Sadie saying that she would never leave Iowa. She was adamant, so stubborn. Her whole family's here. She loves Iowa. There's nothing else out
I
there.
don't love Iowa.
I don't know if anyone loves Iowa.
I love that I'm in close proximity to my family.
Yeah.
And then you guys get married. You go on a nice little honeymoon to a small place, a little known place called Hawaii. For those that might not have heard of it, a little tropical island. That's very nice, I hear, to be at.
Yeah. Definitely.
And then that was correct me if I'm wrong, that was kind of a moment for you saying, oh, there's a lot to see on this earth.
Oh yeah, I was
Maybe.
like, when I came back, I was like, why do I live here where it hurts to be outside?
Yeah.
Hurts to breathe.
Most of the time. Yeah.
See, I get that feeling, but that's just how I live. Man, it just hurts to breathe. Kidding. And we even joked, maybe not even as a joke anymore. It's almost kind of sad though, because you guys have spent years now finishing up this house that you guys have had. And the intent as well is, of course, to have all your friends over here in this nice, beautiful basement here that people watching can't see it all, but I mean it is really nice. And everyone kind of moved away or went to a different profession or whatever it might be, and
Yeah. I mean.
I know that for me, we had even talked about if I was to, say, buy a home in St. Louis, that you guys would even consider potentially moving down because, you have that one, in me, that one person that's going to be there for a while.
Yeah, we love, we kind of love our home. We love the house we picked. There's people here we've met that are awesome. But, I mean, we have, like you, we have our college friends, the high school friends who we're still trying to stay in touch with. And we're kind of waiting for people to kind of set their roots down more, like a house or apartment. Like a house just feels more permanent for us as, like, knowing that you're going to stay in that area. So if we ever considered leaving this area, we were going to wait kind of to see where our friends ended up and see if we wanted to consider leaving.
Now, talk to me a little bit too about, because to me that would put a lot of like mental strain on me, right? Where I feel like, man, I put all this effort in, and then like I can't share this with the people I wanted to share it to.
Well,
Like, is that ever tough for you guys, or for you? Because you had, I mean, I don't know if we want to call it quarter life crisis, right? I know, I feel like I'm going through that on the daily.
quarter life crisis, yeah.
Yeah, I'll coin that term. And, you know, you don't want to be caught in a rut. And I feel like at 25, 26, there's some expectations that you should know what you want to be doing. But I'm also a firm believer in the fact that you could do absolutely nothing until you're 45 and then still make a name for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, and like now, like in the tech age and all that stuff, people are going, especially like after COVID and stuff like that, people are kind of going back into school after like their late teens and stuff. They're kind of changing professions a lot, and that's totally being more normalized, which is awesome. But I think there's definitely something to be said that you don't necessarily have to figure out your life by 25, or that used to be an expectation.
I was joking with a friend of mine of how when you're growing up and you look at older kids and then young adults and you think that they had it all put together, you know. And maybe it's something, you know, you think about what being a young adult 30 years ago, 20 years ago probably is a lot different than it is now. So they might have had some of their stuff put together. But, you know, now that we're in our 20s and 30s and you realize just how many people just are lost or just don't know what's going on or what they want to do next, if you will.
Yeah.
And what was that?
I think it's once you hit around like 25, you realize too that there are people around you were growing their whole life too, growing up. Your parents raising you were growing up, like learning themselves. You don't really stop ever learning about yourself.
Perspective changes, I guess, and you realize not everyone doesn't know what they're doing necessarily. Like when you're a kid, you feel like, you know, your parents figured out everything immediately, but it's kind of, you know, they were learning
right with you.
everything while they're taking care of you.
And there's a lot of things that maybe speed up that growth process as well. You know, whether it's like tragedy or health. I know that whatever you're willing to share, that a lot of people, like even in our friend group, we're not blessed with good genetics, right? You know, I'm not sure how much you're willing to share today, but I know that in college, there's a lot of times where, you know, you were sick.
Very, yeah.
And I guess, how did you balance normal life with the fact that you had, and you can share whatever you had, but all these illnesses that kind of kept you, or I don't know if you want to call it slowed you down, but just really kind of like an anchor?
I think at the time it was debilitating, and my mental health suffered from it. But now looking back, I believe that all of the health struggles that I had were very much so psychosomatic, because after I started receiving therapy and had good quality therapy, I've been healthy ever since. So for me, it was a big realization just recently reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score, because it answered a lot of questions for me. And I just think health overall depends on the mental stability that you have.
There's, I mean, plenty of therapy, pain therapy, you know, pain responses where because of psychological trauma, you have physical reactions to that trauma. Something I'm very familiar with, not on my end, but more like some of the partners that I've been with experience that. And it's tough because, you know, you personally, in my case, there wasn't anything that I could do necessarily to just make that, then wave a magic wand and have it disappear, right? And I think that's kind of sparked a little bit of my recent transition to getting back to being healthy. Over the last couple of months, again, I've lost, you know, the 25 pounds or so. Although the whole point of coming up to Iowa now is to gain all that back in a single weekend. We'll be going to grab some zombie burger and hockey later today.
Hockey game,
where I will be getting the triple walking ched
Oh God.
and letting my fingers sink into that macaroni bun, deep fried macaroni. This is the part of the podcast where we start doing some ASMR. It's just macaroni sounds.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I
And
hear it in my head.
because, there was a point where I got a health checkup, and I think at the time I was 24, 25, and it said that I had high cholesterol.
Oh, okay.
And I was thinking, that's like a 50, well, at the time I thought, I was like, that's like a person who's 50-year-old kind of problem.
Yeah.
And I didn't really take any action onto it until the last couple of months or so, now that I'm 26, when you just kind of, need to focus on your health in whatever ways that you can.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for a lot of people listening, if you are wondering what your next step is to, change, if you will, you can start with your health. Making healthy decisions, even if you don't want to. That's where you find out the kind of person you are, I think, too, because anyone can do what they want. It's more important of when do you do the things you don't want to do that, can actually change your life for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And by no means am I here to preach to people, because there are many times, the decisions I make got me to, certain situations that I wasn't proud of or ideally would do again. But, you grow from that, right?
Yeah.
You learn and grow from that. Mm. And then, I'll kind of end the story a little bit, just again, talking about where you guys are now, but I want to finish the story of how you guys first started dating, because I'm the one that remembers it most clearly.
Probably, yeah.
We were throwing an apartment party.
Oh God.
And we had left some of the alcohol in the car. Mm. And so you and I went on a run to the car. And we're walking back carrying some 24 packs or something like that for either beer pong or flip cup. I'm not sure what it was. We needed some low-grade beer. And you were like, "Hey, David, can I talk to you?" And I was like, yeah. And obviously at this point, we were also not necessarily sober, is the word I'll use. And so he's like, "Hey, man, what do you think if I, ask Sadie out? Would that be okay?" Basically Drew asking me his blessing, or asking for my blessing to let him date Sadie. And because Sadie, again, had spent a lot of time with me.
Yeah.
We were hanging out, and then, just a good friend. And he wanted to make sure that, it didn't bother me, or we would ruin that dynamic. And I literally just Drew, I don't give a ask her and see what happens. And I guess, 3 short years later, you guys ended up getting married.
Yeah.
Right? And that has been probably the most fulfilling thing in my life, that you guys were able to find each other like that, because I feel like a lot of coincidences had to happen for that to actually work out.
Yeah, I mean, especially the story that you told about in the parking lot, but also we discovered that we were neighbors, literally next door neighbors in the apartments. The
fact that the girl that almost ran me over also lived right next door.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing we actually super bonded was I had a camouflage long sleeve t-shirt on, and you were wearing a camo jacket.
Yes.
And you were just like, "Oh, camo on camo." Something like that. And I'm sitting here like, yeah, cool. Camo. I still have that shirt. I
do too.
I don't wear it. my camo wearing days have been numbered, I think.
Yeah, same.
But then now, we started as kids back then, and then now we're in very much different fields. And then you most recently, I would think Sadie has had the biggest transition. Mm-hmm. You want to kind of talk a little bit about what you're doing now, or will soon be doing?
Yeah, I am a big advocate for massage therapy in the medical setting, and recently starting at a cancer center in Des Moines. So I'm super excited to educate just patients about what they can do at home, but also help them with range of motion and pain in a natural way.
Yeah. And I think it's nice that it's with a cancer society too, because that's something that hits a little bit more closer to home with you.
Right.
I think it hits close to home to a lot of people, listening and watching. where it feels like it's almost impossible to not know someone that's going through that.
Oh, for sure.
And, you know, hopefully it ends up being everything and more that you're wanting it to be. I guess, what are some things that are expected from you day one? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, so what I'll be doing is a lot of outpatient stuff. And if you know anyone who's had cancer, anyone who's had radiation or lymph nodes removed, and they want to get a massage, it has to have adjustments made in order for it to be safe for them. So there are specific protocols that we have to follow in order for it to be within our scope of practice to work on those people. They also experience what's called cording, and they actually cannot move their limbs sometimes because all of their lymphatic tissue scars. So by massage therapy, we can actually break that scar tissue up, and then they can have normal range of motion again. So there's a lot of things that we can help them with, but those are a couple examples.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a number of times on this podcast where people tell me what they do, and I will just have to nod my head and, and act like I understand.
That's the beauty behind it, though. There's so much that people just don't know about it, so it's good to get it out there.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to start going to get to this hockey and food. And so, again, I want to thank everyone for coming out and for watching the first episode of Your Day with David, where, again, if you feel like you need a friend, you can come meet mine. Please like and subscribe so you're always getting the alerts of when the next episode is coming out. We will be doing this every Saturday. Again, this will be the one and only time where I'll do this in this basement. So the next episode will be very much different. But again, if you know anyone going through a tough time or anyone who feel like they'd enjoy listening, they're more than welcome to come. And I hope to see you guys next week.